Jesse stared at the cracks in the ceiling, counting each line as he had countless times before. Another sleepless night in this cramped cell left him with only his memories for company. He remembered Grace's smile that night at the bar, her easy laugh as they talked. 2 drinks in, and the flirtation had grown bold. Her hand on his arm, a silent invitation. How had it all gone so wrong? The hotel room was supposed to be an escape, but within its walls, Jesse found only a prison of his own making. With Grace's lifeless body on the floor, the panic set in like a virus. Rational thought fled as instinct took over. He had to make this nightmare disappear. Now he existed in this new hell, alone with the ghosts of his crime. Every day brought fresh torment, reliving that tragic night on an endless loop. But sitting in silence had only deepened his guilt. Grace's family deserved answers, and Jesse knew he could not find peace until he faced what he had done. That's why he requested to see Detective Ryan, the lead on the case that had long gone cold. Perhaps in confession, Jesse might begin to make amends, if the detective would even believe his story after all this time. Ryan arrived at the prison the next day. Skepticism etched on his face. You wanted to talk. This had better be good. Jesse took a deep breath, steeling himself. I'm ready to tell you what really happened to Grace Holloway. Everything. The detective sat across from him, pulling out a notepad. Start talking then, and it better match the evidence, or this is a waste of both our time. So Jesse began his story, starting with that fateful night at the bar months ago. He recounted meeting Grace and the flirtation that blossomed over drinks. Ryan listened silently, showing no reaction. As Jesse described leaving with Grace for the hotel, his hand started to shake. The memories were as vivid as if he was back in that room. Grace's laugh, the feel of her skin, and then it all changed in an instant. We were kissing. Things were heating up, but then she pushed me away suddenly. Jesse swallowed hard. She said it was a mistake and she wanted to leave, but I didn't want her to go. I grabbed her arm to stop her. Ryan's eyes narrowed. Then what happened? Jesse closed his eyes, reliving the horror. She struggled, trying to pull away. I just wanted her to stay and talk, to convince her this could work between us. But she was twisting, screaming at me to let her go. His voice broke. That's when she lost her balance. Her head hit the nightstand so hard. The memory faded as Jesse trailed off. Overcome. When he found the courage to look at Ryan again, he saw only skepticism in the detective's gaze. Is that really what happened? Ryan asked coldly. Or are you just telling me what you think I want to hear? Jesse shook his head desperately. I swear, detective, that's the truth. It was an accident. I never meant to hurt her. But then I panicked. I know I should have called for help. Instead, I just disposed of the body and kept quiet, like a coward. Tears fell as the full weight of his crime crashed over him once more. I know I can never make up for what I've done, but Grace's family deserves to know what really happened. Please believe me, I'm telling you everything now, so no one else has to suffer for my mistakes. Ryan regarded him in silence for a long moment before speaking. You may really believe that story, but there are still holes I need to fill before I can decide if there's any truth to it at all. This is only the beginning, Jesse. Now tell me every single detail, and hope I don't find anything else that contradicts you. And so, Jesse began again from the start, recounting that night with painstaking precision as Ryan listened for any inconsistencies in his tale. By the time visiting hours were over, Jesse had spilled his entire story. But whether it would be enough to convince the skeptical detective, he did not yet know. All he could do was hope this first step towards redemption was not too little. Too late. Jesse took a shaky breath as he prepared to continue his story for Detective Ryan. Reliving that night was like tearing open an old wound, but he had to make the detective understand exactly what happened if he wanted any chance at forgiveness. We got to the hotel around midnight. Grace was still in a flirty mood from the bar, so when I kissed her in the elevator, she kissed me back. But once we were in the room, Jesse trailed off, the memory still painful. Ryan watched him closely. Waiting. Go on. Once we were in the room, she pulled away, said maybe this was a mistake. I'd had a few drinks by then and wasn't ready for the night to end. When she tried to leave, I grabbed her wrist to stop her. Jesse stared down at his hands, as if he could still see Grace's skin beneath his fingers. I just wanted to talk, convince her to stay, but she was struggling, yelling at me to let go. That's when things got out of control. He told Ryan how Grace had twisted, trying to break free, how in the struggle she lost her balance and crashed into the nightstand, and how when Jesse saw her lying there, lifeless and broken, the panic set in. I knew I should call for help, but I just froze. All I could think was how it would look. Me alone in a hotel room with her dead body. They'd think I did it on purpose. Jesse's voice cracked, so I wrapped her in the sheets and carried her out to my car. Ryan made a note, his expression grim. Where did you take her body? The memory made Jesse shudder. There's an abandoned construction site on the outskirts of town. I dug a shallow grave in the dark and buried her there, like she was nothing, like she didn't even matter. He hung his head in shame. Then I went home and scrubbed the room, trying to erase any evidence we'd ever been there. Like if I could make it disappear, it wouldn't be real. The detective studied him closely. You say it was an accident, but there are holes in your story, like how you disposed of the body. That shows premeditation. No, I swear, I panicked. Jesse insisted. I wasn't thinking clearly at all. All I knew was I had to make it go away. Ryan didn't look convinced. What really happened in that hotel room? Jesse. Walk me through every single detail, from the moment you walked in together. Jesse took a shaky breath, steeling himself to relive the darkest moments. We took the elevator up, kissing the whole way. But when we got inside, she pulled away, said maybe this was a mistake. He closed his eyes, picturing it all with painful clarity. I grabbed her wrist to stop her from leaving. She yelled at me to let go and started struggling. I just wanted to talk to her, make her understand. But she was twisting around, screaming. The memory made his stomach turn. I grabbed her other arm to hold her still. That's when she lost her balance and hit the nightstand. There was so much blood. Jesse opened his eyes, tears streaming down his face. I swear to you, detective, it wasn't on purpose. I never meant to hurt her. But then I panicked and did the worst possible thing. Ryan studied him in silence for a long moment. I need you to walk me through every single action, every word said. From the moment you entered that hotel room. Leave nothing out. And so Jesse began again, recounting the night with painstaking detail as Ryan listened intently for any inconsistencies in his story. By the time he finished, Jesse was shaking and drained, but he prayed, opening his soul completely. Like this would be enough to convince the detective, and earn Grace's memory the justice it deserved. After Jesse finished recounting the fateful night, Detective Ryan sat in silent thought for several minutes. The imprisoned man shifted nervously, awaiting his reaction. "I need to investigate your statements before deciding what really happened," Ryan said finally. "Is there anything else you want to add?" Jesse shook his head warily. "I've told you everything, Detective. Now, it's in your hands. Please, just help Grace's family find peace, and let me know if there's any chance I could be forgiven." Ryan gave a non-committal nod before departing. His mind raced as he drove back to the station. Jesse's story aligned with the evidence, but something still felt off. He decided to re-examine the case from the start. First, Ryan interviewed Grace's co-workers again. As an environmental lawyer, she had made enemies, cracking down on polluters. Anyone with a potential motive. Her paralegal, Linda, shook her head sadly. Grace was well liked, if not for her passion, upsetting some corrupt companies. But she never mentioned feeling unsafe until the night she vanished, Linda added quietly. "Grace called me, really shaken up about something, but she wouldn't say what over the phone. Wanted to meet for drinks ASAP, only she never showed." Ryan pressed for details, but Linda knew nothing more. He made a note to check Grace's phone records for anything suspicious. Next, he visited her empty apartment, scouring for any clues. Nothing seemed out of place, but in Grace's bedroom closet, a box tucked away in the back caught Ryan's eye. Inside were notebooks filled with names. Grace's personal records of her cases. Flipping through, Ryan spotted entries circled with question marks. Companies she suspected of covering up problems but lacked proof. Had Grace uncovered something dangerous, causing someone to silence her? He started referencing the names, uncovering several with records of violence or corruption. Top of the list was Janssen Chemicals, implicated in multiple toxic spills. Ryan paid their CO Brian Walsh a visit. The sleazy executive barely tried to hide his disdain for Grace and her meddling, but his alibi checked out on a company retreat the night she died. Ryan made a note to examine Janssen's records closely. Anyway, his next stop was the abandoned construction site Jesse described. Under the overgrown weeds, he found partial remains buried in a shallow grave, matching Grace's DNA. But the forensic evidence raised more questions. No visible wounds or signs of struggle on the bones. Grace's toxicology report showed small traces of rohypnol in her system as well. This suggested she may have been incapacitated before her death, undermining Jesse's story of an accident. Ryan realized the truth was not so clear-cut. He needed to re-interview Jesse with this new information and keep investigating all angles of the case until the real killer was exposed. Justice for Grace depended on getting to the whole truth, no matter how deep the deception ran. A few days later, Detective Ryan returned to the prison for another meeting with Jesse. The inmate watched anxiously as Ryan took a seat. "I re-investigated certain details," Ryan said grimly. "Grace's toxicology report showed she had rohypnol in her system, and the state of her remains is inconsistent with your story. Care to revise it?" Jesse paled, scrambling for an explanation. I don't understand. All I know is what happened that night." Ryan leaned forward intently. "Try again, Jesse. Because the evidence contradicts your account of accidental death. I need the truth, for Grace's sake. What really happened in that hotel room?" Sweat beaded on Jesse's forehead as his heart raced. "No, I told you. That's what happened. I swear. I would never hurt Grace on purpose. The detective slammed his hand down, making Jesse flinch. "Enough lies. I know you left things out before. Now you will give me the full story with no omissions. Start talking." Jesse swallowed hard, hands trembling. "Okay," he breathed shakily. "When we got to the room, Grace did want to leave. But I couldn't let her. I concocted her drink while she was in the bathroom, slipped something in to relax her." Ryan nodded, expression grim. "Go on." "When she came out, she was already wobbly. I kissed her, but she pushed me off." Jesse's voice dropped to a whisper. "That's when I got rough, held her arms so she couldn't fight. But she was so weak. It all happened so fast." He broke down, sobbing. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to kill her. I just wanted her to stop fighting, to give in. But she went so still." Ryan stayed silent, letting the truth sink in before speaking. "You drugged and assaulted her, Jesse. Then you panicked and tried to cover it up as an accident. But the truth is, you murdered Grace." Jesse nodded miserably. "I know. You're right. I'm a monster. All I can do now is tell the real story, no matter how ugly, and accept whatever punishment I deserve. Please, use what I've said to finally give Grace's family justice. They need to know." Ryan stood up. "This confession matches the evidence. I'll be using it to locate Grace's remains and make an arrest. No deals. You'll get a fair trial and the highest sentence the law allows. Thank you for finally telling me the whole truth, Jesse." And with that, it was over. Jesse had confessed his dreadful crime completely at last. All that remained was to face the consequences for his violent act and prayers that his redemption might one day be found, though it could never undo the evil done to Grace. The trial of Jesse Clark for first-degree murder began 2 months later. All eyes watched as he entered the courtroom in shackles, haunted by guilt. Grace Holloway's friends and family observed with steely gazes, seeking justice at last. The prosecutor wasted no time portraying Jesse as a dangerous man who violently silenced an innocent victim to cover his crimes. She emphasized how he drugged Grace and callously disposed of her body. This was premeditated killing that deserved the maximum sentence. When Jesse took the stand, he freely admitted what he'd done, shedding tears as he recounted that night. But his defense attorney argued the crime was born of panic, not malice. Jesse accepted responsibility and felt deep remorse. Signs of rehabilitation were possible. Over several tense days, witness testimony and evidence from the investigation were presented. Jesse remained silent, letting his full confession speak for itself. He hoped honesty would earn favor over further lies. But the jury's judgment weighed heavy. Finally, closing arguments concluded, and the 12 citizens departed to decide Jesse's fate. In the tense hours that followed, he prayed forgiveness was not beyond his grasp, though he deserved no mercy. All rested on the verdict about to be read. At last, the jury filed back in. As the lead read the decision, Jesse held his breath, guilty of first-degree murder. Gasps echoed in the room as relief and devastation warred on people's faces. For Grace's loved ones, justice was served at last. At sentencing, Grace's paralegal, Linda, spoke of her kind spirit and passion for helping others. Now she was gone, leaving only a hole in many hearts. The prosecutor asked the maximum be delivered, life without parole. Then it was Jesse's turn to address the court one final time, before learning his destiny. "I know no words can ever make up for what I've done," he said shakily. "All I can do is be fully accountable and try every day to follow Grace's example of selflessness. I am truly sorry." As he was led away, the judge delivered the verdict: life in prison with a possibility of parole in 25 years. While justice was served for Grace, a sliver of redemption was allowed. If Jesse could walk the talk of rehabilitation and prove himself changed, one day, freedom may come. And so, the case was closed, even as the wounds would surely take generations to heal. Grace Holloway was given a peaceful end to her tragic story, and the man responsible faced severe punishment. Whether redemption could ever be found remained to be seen, but for now, an equilibrium of justice was restored.